everyone. I know there is just aching to come in and watch this conversation today. It's Friday. Let's see. How's my day going today? I know Heather would tell me it's going great. Let's just raise the bar to where we're really at. I did have a nice day today. I got to talk to a company down in San Diego about how we perceive time. Had a nice coaching client today. Then I had a lovely lunch with a friend at another friend's restaurant that she opened mid-pandemic. I mean, it was a good day, but it's going to be topped and made even better because I get to have a conversation with my dear friend Heather, who during, she and I have known each other for now, several years. I even got a chance to live with her and her husband I don't think she had kids at the time, for just a time period. They housed me for a while. And she's just got such a great heart. And during the pandemic, we've gone on walks several times and had just deep, meaningful conversations. You know, she's the kind of person that we'll talk about weather for about 10 seconds, both say it's really hot and sweaty. And then we get into a deep conversation. And it's just wonderful and rich. And so I knew I wanted to have a conversation with her on live Facebook, because I often say that I wish these conversations were taped because they're so great. And I gave her lots of options because Heather does a lot of things. She is a family therapist, so I knew we could talk about that. We could talk about parenting, especially in pandemic situations. She's a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach, so we could certainly talk about that and how important strengths are. And she's also the CEO of my Refuge house, which is a residential therapeutic home, helping young women get out of sex trafficking situations in the Philippines. So we could certainly talk about, so many areas of that: sex trafficking, what it is like to build a community, what it's like to run a nonprofit organization, and really using the strengths of many people on your team. So many things to talk about. When I went to put it out to Heather, she said, I'm really curious right now. I'm focusing on the idea of being a bridge builder in a divided world. And I was like, I love it. Because I think there's so many ways to look at this question. And I have some of my own, she and I can have deep conversations where we disagree on, not disagree, we just have different perspectives. And I want to share some of that with her and hear what she has to say. So I'm going to bring her into the room right now. Heather.
Hi.
Hi, friend. It's so good to see you.
It's great. It's always great to see you.
It's always great. It's always great. How's your day going?
Great in the new definition of great.
Heather, you've been at home with two young boys, homeschooling. Or you're not schooling them, but you're managing their schooling at home.
Yeah, we're always schooling them, but
yes.
Yeah. No, it's, I was thankful for my husband, Joey, before this, but I'm extra thankful because he just tends to love the school part of things and he's good at it. So,
yeah. I've just been witnessing to some of the, the Instagram posts.
Yes.
And
oh my gosh.
I know they're so great. Your boys are so great. And just seeing Joey as a dad. I've known Joey, just as long, and he's such a funny, and just a great guy. I can just imagine him being great partner with raising kids.
And we are not acing every moment of this.
Is there anyone? I don't even think I want to talk to, or will I like the person who is acing every part of this?
No.
And first of all, I'm not going to believe them. I'm just not going to believe them.
Yeah. No.
Well, Heather, I love this. So I'm going to just throw it out to you again. As I invited you in to have this conversation, I knew there was lots of things we could talk about. And you came back outside of the box and said, I'm really curious right now and just investigating what it means to be a bridge builder in a divided world. What is about this that's got you so curious?
Well, okay, so here's how I talk about my soapbox about this.
Get on it, girl. Get on it.
Obviously, to start from the baseline shared baseline here is that we live in a divided world, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like elections prove that. But I think even internationally, there's some divisiveness. Like there's just it's divided. And I feel like I've called the pandemic, this global pandemic, kind of the great magnifying glass. So the highs feel higher, the lows feel lower. And I think the divisiveness feels even more divisive. And so my soapbox is that there are some of us in the world who are gifted, and I will 100% own that when I'm there, I'm almost painfully aware that my ability to stand on a bridge at times is a very privileged place because of my own life circumstances. But there are some of us who are able to stand on the bridge, or even if we're not able to stand on the bridge, we can stand on one side and still see to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who are on the other sides of the bridge who, for many reasons, whether it be their own trauma history, their sense of safety, their sense of security, cannot see the bridge. Like they are so far from that they cannot, and to ask them to do that is sometimes harmful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for those of us who can still stand on the bridge, or at least see the bridge, in those moments where we can, I actually feel like it is our social responsibility to nurture that. Because if not, I think that we will end up with this more warlike, divided planet.
Well, I really appreciate how you said that it is not everyone's responsibility, nor should they get on the bridge.
Yeah.
I think, I this, I teach for a life coaching course, and I was talking about some appreciative inquiry principles this last Sunday. And part of it is really based in positive psychology, which can, even that can be, a negative right there.
Yeah.
And I think they were really one of the principles of AI is kind of the constructionist theory that you are creating the story, like you're creating the story. And I mean, you could just feel the rage in the room
Yeah.
of my aware social justice warriors who are like, no, and they really wanted to call it out. And it was a great conversation. And what you just shared with me, I think, is the perspective that maybe I was going to be a little wary of around, is this a call for everyone on one side to reach across the other bridge? Because here's the deal, Heather. I mean, we live in a really progressive little bubble.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is my feelings around this. I feel like I could be on the bridge as well. I'm easy peasy to be on either side of this. However, I also can recognize people who are strongly on one side who think they're being told to reach out.
Yeah.
And there just seems like no, and I'm really just talking about the political divide in our country right now, but there seems to be no request, desire, or hand coming across. And maybe I'm just blind to it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just blind to it. But it feels like a big ask for one section.
And I would say that I think that is the perspective of both sides.
Yeah.
Is that both sides feel like they are being asked to bend and the other side isn't.
I can hear that. I think it's a bend in different ways, though. I think there's a bend on one side to reach across on one perspective, and there's a bend on the other side to forego your freedom, to bend to not get what you want. It's not, in my perspective, it's not the same reach across. And maybe, again, I'm missing something. Am I missing something? I don't get that messaging.
Yeah, no, I think that I'll share a little context just because I think that it also is we talk about different bridges, right? Like there's smaller bridges and foot bridges and big old concrete bridges that everybody can trail
Let's talk
across.
about all the
So
bridges.
we can take this metaphor to an ad nauseum level if you'd like. But
I love it.
I'll give a little context maybe for how I have come to the bridge where
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I stand. And my mom kind of gave me a big wake up call, I guess a couple months ago. So I grew up in the mountains of Virginia, which tends to land solidly on one side of the bridge,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't always fully identify with. And if we're talking in plain English around politics, it's, Trump. And
Mm-hmm.
and there were a lot of I just had to go back. My mom picked the right time in the pandemic to have a heart attack where it felt okay to fly there, to be there with my mom and dad. Because before that it wouldn't have felt safe, and right now it doesn't feel safe to travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was there still during the global pandemic, and was really pleased to see a lot of face masks in her hometown, and a lot of Trump face masks, and it was interesting, and I found myself just getting really curious. And it's my roots. It's the people who raised me, and the thing that has been very confusing to me is that the bubble that I kind of live a lot in now tends to message it as, here's a person who is not kind or compassionate, and like it's very like, that person is not doing good things for humanity.
Yeah.
And I am in the world of anti-trafficking, and there are a lot of people who are in the world of anti-trafficking who think that he has been God's gift to anti-trafficking. That is not where I stand, because there are some policies and things that have happened that I feel like have actually increased risk factors, and so I'm not going to go down that bridge at the moment. But so I've just been really curious and wrestling with kind of like this weird divide, I guess, like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like how people see this in such a very different way. And a lot of the women who helped raise me in my hometown and in my home church are the people who I credit with giving me the perspective of, look bigger than your own life, have compassion for other people. Your truth is, like, your experience is not the only experience. You're supposed to understand where other people are coming from. Like, I credit a lot of these women with giving me that value of compassion and hospitality, and not othering people. And so I've been very confused, because a lot of them are avid Trump supporters. And so I go home from my mom's heart attack, and who are the first people to show up with food and compassion? And I was telling my mom, I was like, Mom, I'm just so intrigued by this. And I was starting to kind of like fall into the trap. And I think it is a trap. It's a social media trap in a lot of ways that helps us to not see people as complex. And so here I was putting them into this box. I was like, I think they're not who I thought they were. And my mom just looks at me and she goes, Heather, they're still who you thought they were. Like, they're still compassionate. They're still, and I was like, oh, we're just talking about different topics sometimes. And it helped me to kind of remember that they are more than they present on Facebook, right? That they have been sharing news media that is, I think, sometimes pretty limited. But my mom's words to me really, like, you're always challenging me to be more curious. and so like, my mom in that moment was like, be more curious. Like, they're not just who they are saying they are on Facebook. They're not just the art. They're way more than the articles that they post.
Yeah.
And that for me, like, just reminded me, and I think that they also, like, would run the risk of being like, oh, Heather's moved to California, so she's just like one of those California liberals now, which may or may not be true. But I think, like, any part of me that would identify with that actually grew out of the same place where they live now. Does that make sense? So like I've been wrestling with this kind of juxtaposition of that, and being reminded to get a little bit more curious about people than even who they say they are.
Yeah. It isn't, I mean, I think this is where being on the bridge becomes, and it's hard. Oh my gosh, because, love my mom. She also loves Trump. And when you become curious, it's hard because it really does also change your perspective. I think it does change my perspective a little bit of the kind of information that she's choosing to consume and where she's choosing to, place her beliefs, and how it feels so opposite of who I think she is. Right. So I do get that. And then when I became more curious, I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And I know she thought the same. I know she went home and prayed for me. That's the thing. You're right.
Yeah.
She's thinking the exact same thing about me. She went home and prayed for me. I'm sure, no doubt, that I was, going down a path of sin and awfulness and all that stuff. So what does a bridge stander, someone on the bridge, someone who can see either side, what are you doing up there? What's going on for you?
Yeah. Well, so then the other piece of context is that I'm a family therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody comes to family therapy because the bridges at home are all intact.
Right. Right. We just thought we'd come in and tour your office. Hey.
Yeah. They come looking for a bridge builder, right? But they also don't usually come to therapy not hoping for a bridge. So there is that, like, even if it's just a fragment of hope, of looking for, and to me, that in that bridge, sometimes it is just trying to get to the common understanding of where people are coming from.
Yeah.
So for me, the kind of wiring or training of family therapy, I think, has also played a role in the ability of, like, okay, let me take care of myself and my little world right now so that I'm grounded. And when I'm grounded, I'm a lot less threatened when people are different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to be less I mean, I still get angry and I still yell and I still cry. I mean, I cry a lot. So I emote. I'm an emoter.
Mm-hmm.
But the emotion of it for me is all very grounded. Like it keeps me from becoming completely uprooted. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I'm standing on the bridge, or when I'm standing on one side but looking across to the other, it really is from this place of, like, I'm pretty solid over here. So, like, exploring a little bit about who you are isn't going to necessarily threaten my core.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that for me is always kind of the quest of looking for people's core. Like, what's at your core? Because the way you're expressing this is like, there are some people who have very different expression of values than I do. And I think that, like, searching for the core value is the place where I kind of drill down. I don't know. I'll just throw a bunch of this. Can this be metaphor hour?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
We can do whatever we want.
I mean, I like to mix metaphors.
Yeah,
and
let's
we're
do
gonna,
it.
Yeah.
We love your metaphors. Go, Heather. Go.
Do people love my metaphors? I don't know. I don't know. I do. They make
I
sense
do
to
too.
me.
I love them.
Yeah. They don't translate as well sometimes in the Philippines or in other
Mhm.
cultures. But
Right.
so I'm working on that. And it's funny because my staff are also, I think, really helping me because they know that I think in metaphors. So, but one of the other metaphors that I talk about, it's not just the bridge, but if I'm feeling stuck,
Mhm.
like if I'm kind of like, all right, and I'm not super comfortable with where I am, I like to hop in my helicopter and either hover up or hover down. And maybe we can still, like, maybe the helicopter's somewhere near the bridge. And
Okay.
if we want to, like, draw a connection. And so if I hover up, then I get the bigger picture of, like, kind of the landscape of what's going on. But sometimes that's super overwhelming, right? And I can't always make sense of it. So then I just kind of hover down and focus on what's the one thing that I can like find in common or in agreement, or that's a step closer to understanding this.
Well, tell me then, I guess I'm hearing what you're saying and all this,
Yeah.
but what's the point? Like, I mean, why are we standing on a bridge looking at either side?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm very much of the like, one of my core values, one of my core beliefs is that we're all connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, part of the reason that the anti-trafficking movement, the anti-slavery movement, um, resonates with me is I really do believe that like until all are free, none are free.
Mm-hmm.
And so if any one person is barred or blocked or not moving toward their potential, that holds the entirety of humanity back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my foundation is very Christian, and it's very much the like searching for, you know, the 99 sheep. Like the shepherd leaves the 99 and goes and looks for the one. And that for me is kind of a something that appeals to me of like, it's who's left out here, like who's not getting to participate and play and be free to find themselves. And so that for me is a driving
Mm-hmm.
force, and that is searching for what's the piece of Deanna that's not getting developed right now that we need to like find a way to liberate. And I think that that's where like when people are standing on and they're so polarized, I think we can become so blind to what we learn from other people and other people's experiences that also contributes to our own development. Because I'm not left out of that. I also want to keep growing.
Right. I had this crazy image of you standing on the bridge with just like uh, almost like fishing line connections to one side, and you're casting out fishing line and trying to make connections so that you would ultimately be standing on the bridge just with fishing line, millions of lines of fishing line on either side, and you just be in the middle,
Yeah.
transferring back and
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure. So that's why I try to get other people who are ready to be on the bridge to be with me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, I'm also just one person who sometimes, and I sometimes can't be on the bridge,
Well,
and
I
so,
mean, right. Like there's areas like we said we can't talk, let's not talk about that, right? It's
yeah,
true. And, just to go back to what you said earlier, there's different sizes of bridge. Like I just gave the visual picture of a universal bridge and you're in the center of that. But that idea of maybe just being on a footstool and I can see that being really important work in the work that you do with my refuge house and the work you do in your family therapist and starting there in
yeah,
those small intimate conversations that then can go be ripples in the water in other places.
yeah. Well, and that when I first took my job at my refuge house, I was a little nervous that I wouldn't exactly fit in with our founders and with the people who have been part of. I didn't know all of the people. A lot of them were in California. I'd never lived in California. I'd never worked in the Philippines, and so I had all these questions of, is it going to work? Like, is it going to be okay? Or what if I believe something different? What if I think something different? And I actually asked a couple questions, and the Crystal Sprague, our former executive director, said, I've actually found that human trafficking is a unifying topic. That there aren't a lot of people that you run into who are like, what we need more of is human trafficking. And
Well, at
she's
least not.
absolutely
I
right.
mean, let's be real. They're not outwardly promoting it, but there's some promotion.
No.
There's some underground promotion.
Yes, there's some dark web promotion
Mm-hmm.
of human trafficking. But I by and large have found, and I also believe that the people who are promoting it there, a fraction of the population are sociopaths. But I think that most of the people who are engaging in that business and are promoting it actually would prefer to have a wholeness and a life that doesn't include that. And so that, her words anyways, just really became this kind of, I don't know, like just a fit for me to be like, oh, I can, I've had several different experiences in my life that have enabled me to change the language that I use in different settings but still be sincere with the truth that I feel. And so that I can bring people to that, so that it doesn't have to be, because human trafficking will not end with just one group of people leading the way. Like it requires all of us. And that's how I feel about with with systemic racism and systemic anyism. It requires the people who are perpetuating it to have a better understanding of the pain that is on the other side, but also the pain within them that maybe drives them to perpetuate it. And the only way that I've ever been able to get anybody to understand their own pain is through compassion. And that doesn't mean I like support it, that I'm like, hey, let's, but sending people into a defensive place has never, I've not had a lot of success at changing any minds in that way.
And is that the benefit? Like I'm still kind of, hovering around all of this and the idea of, I mean, logically I can see that, but what is the benefit to you, to the people who are on either side of the bridge, for having someone standing on the bridge? What is that?
Well, to go super philosophical on you,
Please do.
for me, one of the things that has always appealed to me is the I think it's the Mandarin character for truth, is a table with 10 eyes around it, I think. And that for me, I think if we're talking like with the quest for meaning and truth in the world, my understanding of that, even though I say I have this core, right? Like I'm solid in my core, but my core is only enriched the more that I understand and bump against other people and kind of flesh their ideas out and see how it fits. And it expands my little worldview, so that it kind of tests my knowledge, and tests my experience and enriches it. I mean, that for me is my however many 15 years of anti-racism work, like trying, and that's super selfish, like, I mean, that's like, but I also think that I have something to give, like, I think that like, it's that kind of like that tug and pull. But I also, I think that like everybody's just better when we aren't just with people who feel comfortable.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And my perspective is that there's a whole big old population of people who don't believe that, who really believe that if I can just hang out with people who look like me, sound like me, are like me, I feel safer and better.
I believe that they feel safer and better.
Yeah.
And I think there you then have a core value of safety, which is not like, I value safety, but I think to help people see that they can still be safe even when they're growing, I think that there's a question. And I don't think that, I think I've told you this story before, but there was a kid who lived at the place where I worked in Chicago, who had never really left that area of Chicago and Northwest Indiana. And we took him on a service trip with a group of kids down to, it was just outside of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And we did Habitat for Humanity. And we were there for a week. And he met a lot of people he had never met before. Like he heard accents he had never heard before. But he was building houses beside people who he thought were super different from who he was. And at the end of the week, he's sitting back in the van and he just goes, after this week, I can say I could see myself living here. And I was like, really? And then he said the cool thing. He says, if I could see myself living here, how many other places in the world might I be able to live? And that for me is he just needed to feel this sense of my core isn't going to be shattered when I'm thrown into something completely different.
Yeah.
And that only happens through experience. But that's also where, for me, understanding the trauma history that people bring to where they are is helpful, because there are some people who can't get there yet. It is too threatening to be asked to even turn and look at the bridge.
Yeah.
And I don't want to rush that for people.
I totally agree with that. I wouldn't want to rush it either. And I also think there's groups of people who really no trauma, just no desire. And how do we get there? How do we get how does one who's on the bridge talk in such a siren that says to them, please hear me out. You've othered people you've never even met, you have no exposure to. You're believing stories that you've never actually experienced yourself.
Yeah.
You feel safe.
I love this technique that I've been using some with my kids called positive peer pressure.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But I think that to me, that is the power of the arts in the media.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have younger people who are watching, and some older people. I think that my dad does deep dives on YouTube and learns more about who knows what, because he can do that. And I think that there are people who are like, oh, that's different. That was the whole with anything in history where we have a shift. People are threatened by something, then they get exposed to it in some way. And I think that is where, when I was growing up, it was a pretty homogenous place, but for some reason, my age group, I had so many friends who were from other parts of the world, and my dad had traveled. And so I was looking at his pictures, and I think through sharing stories with friends, we developed this little cohort where suddenly it wasn't so scary.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to just keep at it and keep showing people. And I think that goes for both groups, right? We have to be human. And I think sometimes I don't always speak super plainly publicly about my belief system. And so every now and then I have an opportunity to kind of come out, if you will, and it's always so funny because to just watch people be like, you believe that? And I was like, well, I like to think that you do too. It's just kind of I think it just kind of challenges that. But that's also where my mom's reminder to me was like, oh, I need to remember the humanity of other people. I've never met someone who didn't want to become a better version of themselves if they have the right tools, if they have the right support in place. But sometimes that requires falling apart and picking your pieces up. And I think that is where, even in therapy, I get really frustrated with therapists who move too quickly through that process without the right supports in place, because you can do a lot of damage. You can leave people without any coping mechanisms. And I'm like, they're coping. It might not be ideal, but maybe we can do some things to build in some other things before we remove that coping mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah. Heather, this has been such a great conversation. My friend. I love it. I feel like we're
deep. I'd like to go superficial.
I feel like we're at the Lost Parrot, but I'm missing the avocado toast. Oh, do you have it? What does it say?
No, it says, "Don't stop believing."
Oh, is that the Lost Parrot glass?
No,
is that parrots on it?
That's it's so a friend. It's a friend gave it to me for my birthday one year. It's got unicorns on it.
Oh, that's great.
And so every now and then, when I just need a little boost,
don't stop believing. So
don't
you can
stop believing.
I know, girl.
Keep at it. Get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I did not again last night. Whatever. Still, it's a work in progress over here. Heather, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. You know how much I love you. I think you're just an absolute delight in this world. And last night, let me just share with anyone who's eventually going to see this. I know your organization and your right-hand woman, Kim, put together a show called Fashion for Freedom. It was beautiful, Heather. Beautiful.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, I was so impressed with it. And raising funds and awareness through fashion and fashion designers who've been partnering with my Refuge house to raise your voice and your mission and what your organization does to help young women in the Philippines. It was really amazing.
Thank you.
I'll put a link in the Facebook again on this to where it was.
That's great.
Anything else you want to share on what you're doing?
You mentioned I'm working on getting my license here in California. I just send in my paperwork to transfer it over. And part of that is inspired by, I know that our world is hurting and I'm always going to be there. But just lately, I'm like, I think maybe I need to officially be able to be there if needed. Because I think that people are suffering right now. And I still have a lot of hope that we can come out of this less scathed than we fear.
Oh, this is why I love my walks with you, Heather. They really are. My soul is always...
I feel the same way. Coach.
My soul is always full when I have a conversation with you. It's really, I feel so fortunate to have some amazing women friends in my life in different facets who are just healers and hopers and standing on the bridgers and lovers. I think lovers of life and humans. And I know that you are deeply one of them.
Can I say one thing? Because you just reminded me. So here's one of my philosophies is that I really think that we can say anything to anybody if it's grounded in a place of love.
Yeah.
And if you think about hard conversations you've had with your mom or with me or with anybody, if for me, if with my kids, if I'm grounded in this place of control and we've got to get this, it never goes well, right? But if I'm grounded in that place of love, and I mean the capital L love, not the capital L love of humanity. Yeah. We can say anything to anybody and they'll take it.
Amen. We just have to trust that and also trust that we're coming from the intention of love.
Yeah.
Of saying this from a place of, I need to say this to clarify something from me to you. Oh God, it just helps everybody when we're clear on that. Yeah. I'm so glad you said that. That's a great way to end this conversation, Heather Bland. Hey, tell the family I said hi. Tell the boys.
I will. I look forward to our next walk.
Oh, let's plan it soon. All right. What?
We're all different. I don't know how this camera works. We're all different and we're all important.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
My sister-in-law's arts place in Virginia.
It looks like one of your, is that a drawing of your family?
It should be, but it's not. It's actually, I think one of the young people who is an artist at her place did it as part of one of their fundraisers.
I love it. So. And is that Laura Bland? Which one is that?
It's Abby Bland.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. The Bland family is a real talented group of people.
I ride their coattails the way I ride your coattails. Just goodness.
We're just going down a fun
Yeah.
hill.
All right.
That's all that we're doing.
All right.
Thank you so much, Heather.
I love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Love you too.